I don't really have Bell's palsy. It's just CGI. Hi friends. Today I'm sharing with you my story about how all my paintings of spiritual nature began exactly 20 years ago today. And before I tell you what happened, I'd like to tell you how things were before that day on February 5th, 2000. And up until then, I had loved art, and I'd done all different kinds of art, be it landscape or portraiture, which I really loved especially. And I was blessed enough to have parents that encouraged me, and they got me into a high school of the arts. And from there, I had awesome teachers that helped me get scholarships into Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. It's there that I met my husband, Mark, who was also super supportive. In fact, he said probably the most irritating thing, though, when we met about art, he came up to me and said, "Hey, I hear you're an artist. Can you draw me something?" Which was like, you know, no artist likes to be introduced to someone else that way. So I came back with, "Hey, I hear you're in med school. Can you show me a cadaver?" Of course, I was serious. I would have loved to see a cadaver. I mean, gosh, who wouldn't love to see a cadaver, really? Anyway, so I never got to see my cadaver, but I got to paint and draw plenty of things for my husband. And I kept on in art school, and during all this time I was doing a variety of things, but one thing that I hadn't really gotten into was religious work. I didn't think that I had what it took to do it justice. I didn't feel I had a voice, that I was good enough to do religious art, and that was for other artists that were good enough. And I was just content that I wasn't one of those. I would do my portraits of, you know, little kids and rich people and hopefully get us through college that way, right? So fast forward a couple of years and a couple of babies, and in February of 2000, we were visiting my husband's parents in Utah, and he was out for the day, and I started feeling something happening on the right side of my face where everything started going numb, and the right side of my tongue actually went numb, and my eyebrow started drooping over my eye. And my husband comes home, and I say, "Honey, look at this. Something's wrong with my face." And he's like, "Whoa." And he was not in medical school by then. He was actually in his residency, and he said, "Well, let's get you to an ER right now." So we go to the ER, and they diagnosed me with Bells Palsy. Now, up until this point, there had been no pain, just numbness. And even, it's kind of a funny side note, I was hearing pitches in my ear that were like an octave higher and lower than people talking, so it sounded like I was in a Star Wars movie. It was just super weird. And later on, I even got shingles on the right side of the roof of my mouth. It's not the best way to lose 5 pounds, but yeah, I don't recommend that. So they diagnosed me, and I get the meds right away. Should have been an easy case. I was 28 years old. It's very unusual to have Bell's palsy in a young woman my age. but lots of things had been happening in my life that weakened my immune system at the time, and that's what they think happened. So we come home from the hospital, and my father-in-law, who's a great guy and loves to give blessings, he loves to use his priesthood, and he's the kind of guy where if you say, I have a headache now, he'd be like, let me give you a blessing. So I come home from the hospital with my husband, and he says, let me give you a blessing. And in that blessing was absolutely nothing about being healed like a normal blessing would be. But in that blessing, I was told that I needed to start using my art for the church, for the gospel, to benefit others. And you know, that gave me a lot of cause for thought. My first thought was, what lessons or what communications was Heavenly Father already trying to get to me that didn't work? Because I was so caught up in feeling inadequate to do religious art that I didn't even think that I should try. So maybe he had to do something like this to get my attention. So that was my first thought. My second thought was, well, I better do it because I don't want him to take the other side. So I went ahead and I started praying. I researched. And during all this time, my face was barely getting any improved. It should have after about maybe 2-3 weeks. That's the norm. But it didn't for me. And I spent another 2 years or so with the nerves growing back slowly. They come from this hole in your skull right here, and they had shriveled away before, and now they were growing back, and they were growing back wrong. And some of them didn't grow back at all. And I was really saddened that I would never be able to do my big smile, my big toothy grin like I was used to. That my children would never see it again. But you know, God is so wise. He knows how forgetful I am, how ADHD I am, and He left some of this with me so that every morning and every night, when I look in the mirror and I see the unevenness, the leftovers of the Bells Palsy, I'm reminded of that blessing and what He wants me to do with the talent that He gave me. He wants me to affect His other children for the better. And I think that's what all talents are. They're gifts given to us so that we can better the lives of those around us. So after praying, reading lots of scriptures and talks and conferences, I felt really strongly that I needed to do a series on women in the gospel. And after time, that even morphed not just from women in the scriptures or history, but women as the ideals, the things that we're trying to capture, the values that we want to proclaim or put into ourselves. So sometimes it was women from the scriptures. Started off with ones that I was really familiar with and felt strongly about, like Eve and Jochebed and Moses and Esther. My middle name is Esther, so you know, I just, things that I felt super strongly about, and I wanted to portray those from a point of view that would make people not take the story for granted. Because so often we hear the same biblical other stories and we kind of write them off. Oh, I know that one. That's, I know that backwards and forward. I've known it since I was a kid. So I would take each story that I felt inspired about after praying about each one, and I would research it. And I would, if I could go to the place, I would. Couldn't go to where Esther's palace was, but it still exists in modern day Iran. But luckily there's great archaeological digs and things like that. So I just tried to portray those women to make us think a little harder about their situation, and especially how it applies to us in the latter days. Those stories are totally applicable to us here. Esther, for example, having to have strength to overcome her hardships and the hardships of her people by fasting and praying and asking other people to do the same for her, so that she would be brave enough and have the Spirit with her to confront the king. So, I'm being joined by the dog. If you hear heavy breathing, that's what it is. Hey, sweetie. So, for the past 20 years, I have been doing these paintings, usually about one a year. It slows down sometimes because of kids and life and moving every few years with the military. But what I want to share is, lastly, how important it is that we have faith in the plan for us. That each of us is different. Each of us has a different skill set and talents. But the one thing we have in common is that we were given them for a reason. That we were given these gifts to share, to uplift, and to inspire others. Sometimes when I go through my paintings and I look at them up on the walls, I realize that I learned a significant lesson with each one of them. I can go to the widow of Zarephath and say, she taught me about service that hurts. I can go to the painting of the 5 wise virgins and think, oh, I need to be doing all the daily little things in my life, those drop by drop of oil things that will prepare me for the hard times in my life that will always come. They always do, right? So only by doing those daily things of praying, reading my scriptures, studying, doing good for others, and not being self-centered, things like that, those daily little things, those drops of oil, those are the things that prepare me spiritually for when the hard times come. Lessons like those are what have made me stronger, by looking at the women who have overcome trials in their life. I can grow from their stories. And every day, every morning, and every night, when I go and brush my teeth and look in the mirror, I see my crooked face. It's okay. Honestly, I don't know what I would be without it. And I don't want to know. I think it was maybe one of the best things that ever happened to me. I just wanted to show how art can reflect a journey, and a spiritual journey at that. This collection, the Women of Inspiration series, is probably my own journey, but it's also yours. as we learn all these little life lessons, and we may not always have a picture to go with it, but for me, they are like my testimony growing since I've had Bells Palsy and since I changed the direction of what I wanted to do with my art. It's no longer important to make it big or to gain recognition or even sell work. It's more important to, and it brings me more joy, to bring joy to others through my art. And I just wanted to share that with you. If you want to share a story with me, or you've been affected in some way by my work, and please check it out. Just Googling my name will bring up the website or anything. It's Megan Rieker, Rieker. Please feel free to look, and I hope you'll be inspired by it. Thank you for watching.